Always happy to have the next gentleman on the Sports Card Nation guest line. He is a multi-time alumnus of that, and it's been a little bit since the last time, so I figured I would. It's about time we have him back on. It's a guy that has his finger firmly on the pulse of the hobby. Very insightful, very intelligent, and always glad to have him part of this show. Chris McGill, Card Ladder, Crossover, uh, House of Jordans. I probably forgot a title there, but as always, welcome.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, John. It's always an honor to get the chance to come on this show, man. Big fan of the show. I've been listening to this show. Might even be close to a decade by now.
It's where this will be our eighth year. That's crazy when I really
Yeah.
think about
I,
it.
I remember when the
I
show you didn't have a microphone. I remember when the show like I had to
I
hurt
was
my ear
when
to
it,
listen to it, and I still listen
I
to it.
was in the basement with a candle and
Yeah,
the phone.
yeah, yep.
Yeah,
Good
a
old
little
days,
different
man.
now. Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and coming from you, like you're an OG as well. Like I've been called that, but you're an OG as well. We've done this numerous times, and always glad to have you. Look, we don't need to do. We've been on enough. We don't have like where it all. So we've covered that, but
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
said, you have your finger on the pulse. You're very active in the hobby. Um, uh, Again, let's say I'll make you hobby president. I know that's supposed to be Mangini. He's
Yep.
been impeached. You're the guy now. State of the union, right? Good and bad. Like, where do you see the hobby right now? It's like every year it's in a way different spot than the previous year. We between mergers and acquisitions, companies by the wayside, new companies. How would you describe the landscape and the terrain?
Great question. Let me say this, John. John Mangini is unimpeachable. President Mangini is unimpeachable. All right. I feel like
But
I
just
have
for
to give him that respect. Okay,
just for the question's sake,
but I'm gonna
hypothetically.
I'm gonna go with a hypothetical, and I'm gonna say that so if I'm gonna take a little creative license here, sort of if I'm giving the state of the hobby, the the theme of my speech would be caution and stop and smell the roses. Okay. And I'm just coming up with this off the cuff. I mean, you gave me a little warning that this question was coming. I've been thinking about it a little bit. And this is where I would go with it. I think I would say caution and stop and smell the roses because the hobby has a lot of flaws, has a lot of pain points, has a lot of things that could be improved. But nonetheless, it's a pretty okay hobby. It's a pretty good hobby, if I may say so. And things are going pretty well, and plenty of people are doing well, and plenty of businesses are doing well. Plenty of card shows are well attended. Marketplaces are setting record high volumes. People are having fun building their collections. People are having fun buying, selling, trading, dealing. And it's not guaranteed that it's always going to be like this. For as many flaws as exist today, and there are plenty of legitimate flaws that exist, and for as much room for improvement as there is, John, it could be a lot worse. It could be a lot worse. And you know what? It might be one day. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be pessimistic. I want to be realistic and say that when something's going pretty well, and I just ask, when like the politicians say, ask yourself, were you better off, 4 years ago or now? I say to my fellow hobbyists, ask yourself, are you better off now than you were 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago? And maybe you were better off then, but maybe you're better off now. But in any event, even if I feel like I was better off 5 years ago, it's like that show, The Office, when they say, I wish I knew when the good times were so I could make sure to enjoy them as they're happening. Well, these might be the good times. So, that's my message is and then the other part of it, so that's the stop and smell the roses part. The other part of it is caution. Caution to say things are good, but let's not make the mistake of getting overly indulgent and taking things too far and getting swept away. And losing our sense of responsibility and going beyond what our budgets are and being irresponsible and not thinking long term. And so that's the other message is caution to say that that we have to fight to preserve a good hobby experience. It's not just going to be handed to us. So we should be cautious. We should take stock of things. We should protect what we think is good. We should work on improving what we think isn't good, and and know that we're in an upswing right now. I mean, generally speaking, the numbers are all pointing up. So let's be cautious. Let's be cautious and enjoy a good thing while we've got it.
Well said. I agree. I like how you were optimistic, but you were real. You kept it real. Like, hey, not everything is roses and daisies and great sounding music, right? Just tread lightly. And I've heard the term. You know, I've heard people self-appoint themselves, Chris. Like, I'm a hobby watchdog. I've heard people tell me I'm a hobby watchdog. My answer always is like, you don't, number one, you don't self appoint your hobby watchdog. And we all need to be stewards of that. We're all hobby. We should all be looking out for each other. It always bothers me a little bit when someone kind of knights themselves that, because I think we all are in our own right if we're active participants, right? We should all try to help each other. If we know something that can make a difference or help someone else out or save them maybe from going down a pratfall. I believe we should all do that. I don't think it's one person's job, I think it's all of us together. When you hear that term hobby watchdog, like what are your general feelings when you hear that?
I think you just hit the nail on the head. I'm reminded of something Josh Adams said the last show I did live with Jeremy, the Sports Cards Live, the Saturday night show. Josh Adams and I are like, sometimes we come on at the very end and we
Yeah.
just chat a bit. And Josh said that hobbyists have a duty to educate each other, to help each other if they discover something or learn something, to share it with the community. And that really resonates with what I think you're saying right here with the watchdog angle, that we all have a duty to be watchdogs. This is a neighborhood watch, and we should all be looking out for each other's homes. We should all be looking out to protect each other, and then expect the same in return, that people are going to look out for us too. And if we all kind of pull our weight, and if we all sort of step up as hobby watchdogs, and we do it responsibly, and we stay in our lane, like there are some things that I'm not an expert about. I don't know how to spot certain fakes, so somebody else is going to have to fill in the gap there and do the things that I can't do. But if we all sort of chip in where we can, kind of like a potluck, if we all bring a dish, we're all going to be fed, we're all going to be taken care of. So I like that framing quite a bit. I think that's actually one of the best ways I've ever heard the hobby watchdog concept laid out, is that we all have a responsibility to be watchdogs.
Yeah, and I always feel, and maybe it's not fair, I always feel when someone sort of like puts that tag on themselves or anoints themselves, I think it's almost more for their ego, like, hey, I'm this, and maybe you're not this. When I want to say, like, we're all this, like you are, but so is everyone else. Like, it's not, there's not a commission that said you are, and Chris is and John isn't, or John is and Chris isn't. And so that's where I'm coming from. And like you said, we all, I like the neighborhood watch analogy too, right? The hobby is all of our neighborhoods. We
Yeah.
should all be looking out for anything that's not above board or not right, and that sort of thing. Or even just helpful, like you said. Let's have a block party and everyone bring a dish to pass, and let's have some fun too. So it doesn't always have to have a negative connotation as well, right? Information can be positive, like, hey, this card short printed, or this number's not in the set for whatever happened, whatever reason, things like that, right? Just useful information. Watchdog always has sort of a Crime Stopper feel to it. And listen, we both know that there's that aspect in the hobby. So I'm not like poo-pooing that or sweeping that on the rug, but it's not all that, right? That's a small percentage. I think you'll agree. There's more positive stories than negative ones, but like the regular news, right? What gets more ratings is some of the negative stuff. So I think we kind of both thinking along the same lines. A little speaking of positive, let me put you a little bit. If I said describe your PC today, how would you answer that question?
Describe my PC today. I would say it's come a long way. It's come a long way because I've come a long way as a collector, and I've learned so much. It's really the last few years for me as collecting. Like the last 2 years have been so much about researching, learning about sets, learning about history, um, diving deep into checklists, building spreadsheets, learning about the significance of particular issues and like finding ones that resonate with me and then like deliberately seeking those out to add to my collection. And that's just it's come a long way. That's how I feel about my collection, and it would be it's unrecognizable compared to what my collection looked like 10 years ago. It's unrecognizable compared to what it looked like 5 years ago, and probably 5 years from now it's going to be unrecognizable again. So it's evolving, it's changing, and that's what makes it fun. Like the thing that's just been lighting my fire for the last few years is research and learning more and more. Like maybe if I come across a new player I want to collect, and then I'll spend weeks making a spreadsheet of all of their rookie year cards. Like for an ultra modern player anyway, it can take weeks. And I'll look at all of them and I'll find the ones that I really like, and then I'll build my saved searches and wait for those to show up. And I've really come a long way as a collector. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's good to hear you say how, because that's how I'm sort of more down the middle. I'm more of a rookie card collector, Hall of Fame, for sports. Um, but speaking of that, when you go to, I know you're a busy guy when you're at the national, and I know you go to more shows than the national, but I'll use the national as a focal point for this question. Do you go in, and I don't know how much time away from the booth or downtime, if you will, to kind of go around and maybe look at cases and pick up some stuff. Do you have like, are you a guy that has like a target list, or you kind of fly by the seat of your pants and say, you know what, something strikes me, like I like that, or are you more of a regimented where like, hey, I've got a list of 5 to 10 cards or 3 cards or whatever. What's your approach? And maybe you can take even the national. You're at a card show and you're looking to acquire cards. What's your sort of modus operandi, if you will?
I absolutely have preset ideas in my mind of what I'm looking for, but it's a big list. So,
Yeah.
there's like, it's almost like categories that I'm looking for. Like Nikola Jokic is a player that I collect. I know because of my research that he only has 36 one of ones from his rookie year that are solo cards. And then he has 2 one of ones from his rookie year that are multiplayer cards. So he has 38 total. And I'm looking for any of those 38. I've got 5 of them, and I'm looking
Yeah.
for any of the other ones that I don't have. So that's a category. And if one of those show up, that's something that's definitely on my list that I might be interested in if we can work out a fair price. But I'm also very flexible. Like I'm not going in and saying, well, I need these 3. Like, no, I like the whole category. If it's a Jokic rookie year one of one, I'm interested. So I've got a pretty big list. Like, and I've got that approach for all my PC players where like if a card fits into a category that I'm really excited about, then there's probably hundreds of cards that could be of interest to me anytime I go to a show. But so I start with the list, but it's a big list, and then within that list we can get real flexible, and anything from that list I might try to make a deal for.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I go to the net, I'll answer my own question. I'm going in there with like 5 to 7 cards. I know I'm probably not getting all 5 or 7, but if I can, a good percentage,
Yeah.
then that's
Are you how
a
much
good
of a
choice.
planner are you, John? Like in general, do you plan a lot or do you kind of
I
let
there's a
those
little there's a little OCD in
Okay,
there.
yeah.
If I guess
Yeah.
that's how I'd answer that question. I rather plan. I'm not to you know down to like the minute, but I like to have some sort of game plan. Maybe that's the old coach in me where you
Yeah.
sort of you devise a game plan. Now you sometimes, as you know, in sports, right, you might have a game plan going in, and you've got to pivot and come up with a plan B. But I like to have some sort of thought process in place of what I'm doing this day or what I'm looking for this day, right? But you also got to be, like you said, the word flexible, right?
Yeah.
To like be able to like, hey, something doesn't happen in the way you thought it was gonna. Like I got to pivot and flow with it. So like you said, I'll have a list, but have I bought something? That's sure. I think we all probably can say that we something just catches our eye and we're like, you know what, that wasn't even on my radar, but I like it and the price was right and now in my backpack. So I think we've all done that, and you shouldn't have to apologize for that, right? But I think you have to have sort of I think it's all if you don't go in with one and you're just too wide open, then it's
Yeah.
like being loose on a racetrack. You,
Nope,
you
you
know,
don't
you
want to
got
do
no
that. You need a playbook. You need a playbook, right?
yeah,
Like going with the
yeah,
coaching metaphor, you
yeah,
know, I might have 100 plays in my playbook that I might be interested in running, but I'm going to stick to my playbook. I'm not going to start making up
yeah.
plays in the middle of the game.
Yep, yep. No, you're right. You're right. So I got to ask you, what's your travel schedule look like in a 52-week
Oof.
year? I know you're a busy guy, like besides traveling, but has it increased? We talk about it like the last 5 years. Has your travel schedule increased, or has it always been
It's
pretty
increased.
steady and busy?
It's increased, and part of that is because the pandemic is over. So it's just there's
Yeah,
more moving about and going out and doing things. But like this year, we're not even halfway through March, and we've been to Los Angeles. We've been all over Los Angeles, the different neighborhoods in Los Angeles, visiting card shops. We've been down to San Diego. We went to the Front Row Card Show down there. We've been up to the Bay Area. We've been to card shows and shops up there. We've been over to Arizona. We've done stuff over in Arizona too. We've done stuff locally. I'm going to be going to the Chicago Spectacular this weekend. It's been a very, very busy year so far. And then, obviously the Nationals coming up, and it's tough. Like this summer, it could be really stressful trying to do all the traveling if you're going to Fanatics Fest, if you're going to the National, if you're going out to the West Coast Card Show that comes out a month after that. And by the way, we were at the West Coast Card Show in Ontario, California also. So, there's a lot. And if you're not careful, you can end up traveling too much or wear yourself out. Because even coming into this year, we were out east. We went to the EC3 show in Connecticut, and we were doing stuff out there. That was like in November and December, going to shops in Connecticut and New York, doing that whole thing. And sometimes your body will just tell you need to take a break too. Like after this last trip, we were out west for 2 months, and then as soon as I got home, I caught a cold, and I was my body just shut down for a week or two. That can happen too. So, but yeah, it's been a lot of traveling, man. It's been a lot of traveling, and there's going to be more. We got
yeah.
Arizona coming back up again in April. We got the Spectacular this weekend. We got the National this summer, and that's just the next few months.
When you have a weekend, I don't know how many there are, but when you get that weekend where like, hey, I can be home,
Hmm.
maybe work, maybe doing some work. Like, do you enjoy those too? Is it like because you maybe don't get as many of those as you would particularly like all the time? Like, how do you approach like that a quiet weekend?
Yeah,
Or is it weird because you're busy so much? Or like you don't know what to do?
it's just funny because I've got one of those lifestyles where my work and my recreation are intertwined.
Yeah,
If I ever got a free afternoon, like I'm going to want to go to a card shop, or I'm going to want to do some research on cards, or I'm going to go look at auctions that are ending soon, or, I'm going to make a podcast, or, like, I've been very fortunate that even working in the space that it hasn't extinguished my excitement for doing it as a hobby at the same time. In fact, it almost reinforces it. But the one thing that I do like to do, John, like, if I'm out of commission because I'm sick for a few days or whatever, like I'll just throw on movies, man. Like I just watched this new movie called The Trap House with Dave Bautista and the other guy, I can't remember his name right now. And now I'm like down this Dave Bautista rabbit hole. I think he's great. I always love the
Yeah,
tough guy movies. Like I was big on
yeah.
Jason Statham movies, Vin Diesel, Bruce Willis. Like I love that genre. And now I got these Dave Bautista, this little his filmography that I'm going to start working through because I really like his stuff. So that's what I do. If I'm blowing off some steam, I'll throw on a movie like that.
Yeah, and it's tough, like knowing what you do, and I know you just got over an illness. Good to see you're feeling better. That's got to be even tough because, like, as you know, right, while we're sick, like stuff is still happening,
It
and
don't
it doesn't
stop.
slow down.
It doesn't
Yeah,
stop
and
for
it's
us.
just it's like work piling on the desk, and so
Yeah.
obviously you can't control being sick, but you almost feel guilty. Like I need to get to that, but I can't. I'm not feeling it. That was when I get sick, and listen, I'm older than you, so I probably get sick maybe a little bit easier or more often, I should say. I'm always like, man, I can't be sick right now. I got to
Right.
do this or do that, and it's tough. But unfortunately, you don't get to control that. And as you well know, health has got if health has got to come first, or the work won't even matter anymore. You won't
That's
be in
true.
any condition to do it.
You got to
So
listen to your body too. If your body's telling you
yeah,
it needs a break, it gets the
yeah.
final say on that.
So you mentioned, you sort of touched around the edges of we've heard the term hobby burnout. I've done a hobby quick hits on it. It's something I've talked about even just in general conversation. I have moments. I wouldn't say I've ever had so much hobby burnout because I don't really get to that point, Chris, like you said, because I love the hobby enough where like I'd really have to like go way over the top to ever get to it. But there are weekends where I say, and we even talked a little bit about this before record. There are weekends where I say, you know what, I'm not doing content, I'm not looking at or listening to, I'm not touching cards for 2 days, 3 days, and then I'll get back on the horse. Do you have moments like that, or are you just too busy where you really can't even afford to do that? Let's say.
Oh no, I'll absolutely, if I'm like, I'm tired of looking at this stuff, dealing with this stuff right now, I'll take a break. But yeah, I mean, if it got to a point where I was genuinely burned out, uh, I would need to reconsider things, and I know that. I know that about myself. Like, if it ever stops being fun, you know, might be time to take a second look and reevaluate. So I always keep that in the back of my mind, And life ain't all about having fun. It's about putting your head down and working and contributing and having meaning and so forth. And I understand that too. Like I'm not sitting here expecting that every day is going to be sunshine and puppies, but if overall the experience is starting to drain me and it's having a negative impact on my life, I'll start looking elsewhere. But unfortunately, I've never had that. I've really never had anything even close to that. I've had and that's different. Like in one of my previous professions when I worked in the music industry, I loved making music as a hobby. And then when I went full time and professional in it, I liked it for a while, but I started to lose the passion because so much of the work I was doing was at the direction of other people. Like you need
Yeah.
to make me compose some stuff for me that sounds like this, or I don't really like how you mixed this. I want the vocals to be louder and the kick drum to be lower. And after a while, it's just like, well, I'm just kind of a machine. I'm just doing other people's bidding. I really am not having a creative outlet. And I think I carried some of those lessons over into working into this space to where I sort of built a moat around myself that lets me be creative, lets me sort of work on my own terms to some extent. But also at the end of the day, when you're providing a service, every customer is your boss. If somebody has a complaint or an issue or a question, I have to step up, or somebody on my team is going to step up and we're going to address it. That's our job. That's part of, running a decent business. So, it all kind of plays together and works itself together there. But Burnout's a real thing. And then there's something else. There's another side of the coin. So you can get burnt out. But my buddy Curtis brought this up to me the other day when we were talking. There's the opposite of burnout, which is like addiction, or you're overindulging in the hobby and you're
Yep.
spending too much, and it's taken away from your time. It's taken away from spending time with your family and your loved ones, or it's taken away from your professional responsibilities or your other duties in life. And then that can be a problem too, where it's the opposite of burnout. You're doing too much. You're burning the candle on both ends. And that
Yep.
can be something that might need to get regulated also. So we have to moderate ourselves on all the extremes. And I could be maybe more susceptible to overindulging, to just making the
Yep.
hobby too much of my life and not having a balance. So having a balance is really important too, John.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned like the addiction part, because and hopefully that this isn't someone out there where where it's unhealthy, right? There's good things, right? Listen, you could be doing something really terrible or illegal, and that sort of thing, right? But like anything, right? Anything can be addicting, depending on how much you do it or where it starts affecting not just yourself but other people or relationships, right? And sometimes when you're in that, you may not even realize it takes someone else to say, "Hey, you missed this," or "Where were you for the birthday party? I invite," or whatever. I'm just bringing up stuff off the top of my head, but stuff like that is where it can go. Like you said, there's two sides to that coin as well. So it's a good point that you brought up as well. And I think we've all had moments. I think we've all had days where like I did a lot of stuff hobby wise today, and but it's when those days start to run together where maybe that becomes more of an issue than one day, if you will. But like I said, I've had weekends where I'm like 2 or 3 days, like I'm gonna take a break. And when I've done that, Chris, it's the old cliche saying, right? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Taking those couple days off, I'm like excited to get back, right? I'm itching or chomping at the bit, as they say. So
That's
I've
how I
always
do it with my collection, John, is that I make
yeah,
sure to not just sit and stare at it all day, but I
yeah,
make it a reward. Like, you
yeah,
know, I'm not going to force myself to go enjoy my cards, only when I'm like, oh, you know what would be a nice break right now? If I could thumb through the collection for a few minutes, and then I'll go do it, and I won't overdo it. I'll put them back
yeah.
away, and then we'll come back in a week or however long it takes.
Yep. And why not, am I right? You, like I say in one of my mantras, right? You built your collection, be proud of it, right? You should have those moments where
Sure.
you go through and say, yeah. And besides even the cards themselves, this, I'm preaching to the choir here, but even the stories behind the acquisitions. I remember how I got this card. I remember what show it was. I remember who it was from. I remember the negotiations and this funny moment or whatever. Every card has a different story to tell. So it's even looking at the card and then thinking about the backstories behind the cards. I think that's important as well. And sometimes we forget about that. I always say like it's the acquisition is great, and that's obviously the end game, but don't forget about the journey along the way to get that whatever that acquisition may be, whether it's an individual card, a whole set, that sort of thing. I think it's important I think we appreciate it more when we think along those terms rather than, with some people like, oh, look at this $10,000 card, which is great and nothing wrong with that. To each their own, but it's more than just to me anyway, and I know to you, it's more than just a dollar sign or a dollar value.
It's got to be. That's how I find collecting to be sustainable. And that's when I'm thumbing through my collection. I mean, I was just thinking, and I wonder how it works for you. What are all the things that run through my head when I get to a certain card? And I like, for example, I could go through my shoebox right now, and I know the acquisition story for all of it. I know I
Yep.
got this card at this show, and I got it from this
Yep.
guy, or I won this on an eBay auction, and it's no great story, but I still remember it. I know where it
Yep.
came from. I know when I got it. I know what I was thinking. And sometimes that can be fun too. If I won the auction because I placed a big bid at the end and it was exciting. It's like there's a story to every card. There's an acquisition story, and then sometimes there's provenance. Like I might get to know who owned it before me and how long it was in their collection and what it meant to them to let it go to me and stuff. Like the more connection I can get, the more the card connects me to different meaningful moments in my life. Usually those are the ones that I sit there and enjoy for a couple seconds longer.
That and the two, even multiple cards are tied to each other. It may be
True.
I got this, and this card, these three cards in that deal, and it might even be different sports, but it was just from that dealer.
True.
We we haggled, we negotiated on price, or I traded this and added some cash. All those things are just every card tells, and multiple cards might tell the same story if it's a bigger deal as well. So it's just so many. It's like looking, you see those detective shows, and they got all the suspects and the stuff on the wall, and all the like strings connecting all the leads and stuff. I look at cards sort of like that, but instead of suspects, they're cards, right? And people behind the cards. So that's how when I look through my stuff, that I remember. Usually I'm getting older, Chris, so it's getting a little trickier, but generally I remember the show or even a year, like how long I've had some, because when it comes to PC stuff, I really don't move it. It's once I own it, I kind of keep it, so I know kind of what show, what year. I went to Dallas. I remember picking that up there. Those sort of things. I think most of us do that. And I think we appreciate what we have more when we think of more along those lines than not, if you will. So Card Ladder, you've come a long way. I know you and Josh and Christina, and you like, so where you are today from when it started, like how do you explain that? Like, I know it's hard to do it quickly, but just like, did you envision where you are today when you kind of, I'm assuming not, but I'll ask you, from when you, built that thing to where you are today, like how kind of describe that evolution, if you will.
Yeah, we just had a hope and a dream that, we could carve a little space for ourselves in the industry. And I think the timing was right, and the mix of people was right. The people that I work with at Card Ladder, Josh and Christina, my brother Nick, and the members of our research team, it all just kind of it all sort of just fortuitously came together, and you need all of it, or at least I think. All of it has to click. And then once we joined the collectors family tree, and they helped us out, they infused us with some resources, and the research team that we have now, like several of them came over from other branches of the collectors company tree, and they were willing to let those employees come join us. And so, there was a lot of lucky things that happened to get to where it was, but we always held out the hope that we'd still, we started this almost 6 years ago, and we always held out the hope that we'd still be here 6 years from now, sustaining ourselves, working in the hobby, helping hopefully to make collecting a little bit better for people, make the experience a little more enjoyable, or at least help out in some way. So I know it's not always enjoyable. Sometimes Card Ladder, it can be an obstacle to a negotiation because there's a comp out there that people don't like, and it's in the app, and they get upset. So but overall, hopefully we're providing information, and even if everybody doesn't love us all the time, that hopefully on balance we're helping people collect better, make more responsible decisions, and so on.
Now I'll make a statement. You tell me if I'm right, or you agree with it. I think we're seeing more vintage collectors use the tool and the analytics than ever before. Would that be an accurate statement?
Probably. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right. The one complaint that I hear from vintage collectors, and listen, I'm one myself. I'm not necessarily a complainer, but I get the point. I've heard this statement. Tell me, like, right, wrong, what you think about it. A lot of vintage collectors will use VCP They kind of weigh all the weigh all the sales, and come up with like a an average. And a lot of people say Card Ladder doesn't really do that. It really just takes the last one. I don't like that. And this again, this is just a complaint or a commentary that I hear. And I want know when I was going to talk to you, I wanted to ask you like for if you've heard that. I'm sure you probably have, and like what's the answer? What's the response to that feedback, if you will? I don't want to say complaint, just feedback.
It's great feedback. We have heard it. Um, and, to the extent that we can give that experience to vintage collectors, I'd love to. But it always comes with trade-offs. It always comes with trade-offs. And I also want to pay respect to VCP, which has been here since the 2000s, right? So that's a great product. And to be compared to it is great. And
I'll say this, Chris, and to be fair, and I don't mean to cut you off, but sure, they have their things too. Like I can tell you, we're not going to do that, but like,
right. Of course, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. And so the fact that that there's options, right? That people like the way that they do it better, especially on the vintage side, because what that's getting at is that a lot of vintage and pre-war collectors take a tradition of pricing things where let me take the average of the last 10, or I had a vintage collector come to our booth at the West Coast Card Show, and he had a notepad and a piece of paper. He said, I used Card Ladder and I wrote down the last 20 sales of the card and the grade. And I was like, really, how far back does that go? And he's like, well, I was using your database and I went back 2 years. And so I was like, wow, okay, well, this guy's looking at comps from 2024 and he's taking an average and he wants to look at all of them. And what he's doing and what Card Ladder is pretty good at is that, if you know a card that you're looking for, you type it in, you type in the grade that you're looking for, you can isolate the results to only that grade, and then you have the picture of all of them. And so what he did was he wrote down all the different prices from the last 2 years, and then he wrote down notes about each of the images. So, he said this one's well-centered, this one was off-centered, this one had a pinhole, et cetera, et cetera. He had notes for all the different ones. And so he was able to really dig in and he looked at each sale in depth. He looked at what marketplace it came from. It was in-depth research, and I could tell he enjoyed it too. He was getting an enjoyment out of it. But for somebody who might say, well, what, I don't, I just wanted to just give me, if I want to look at the average of the last 10, give me the average of the last 10. If I want to look at the average of the last 5, give me the average of the last 5. And there's just not a really clean way to do that right now. And we could build that, or we could talk about it. We could have internal discussions about it, but there are trade-offs. There are trade-offs that come with that. So like our sales history feature, for example, it's very simple. There's no extra bells and whistles from the immediate presentation. It's a search bar. It's a search bar into hundreds of millions of historical sales, and you can just go. You type in what you want, you start getting your results, you start filtering them, and then you can start adding on. If you want to click and look at a sale, if you want to look at the population, we'll tell you, you're one click away from seeing the population of this card and all the different grading companies using the universal population feature that lets you see this is how many in PSA, this is how many in BVG, this is how many in SGC, etc. So there's lots of features that kind of get built onto it, but it's like we think about it, like we hear the feedback, we think about it, we take it into consideration. If we get a lot of it, if like 20 people come up to our booth at the National this year, and especially you really have to say it to Josh. Okay, you got to say it to Josh because he is the mastermind and the architect who is the developer. He's our lead developer. He's our only developer. So, if he hears it from a decent number of people that, hey, I'd really like the ability to, like, if I'm looking at a PSA 4 of a specific card, I'd like the ability to push a button and say, show me the average of the last 10, show me the average of the last 5. if he heard that from a few people, he'd probably build it. Okay, he'd probably build it. So, that's but we'd have to discuss it. Like, if we do that, where do we put that button? What real estate does it take up on the screen? Do we want to add that feature? Like, is that going to help people or is that going to confuse people? And we have a lot of users already that really like the experience. And with a piece of software, John, anytime you change something, everybody who's used to the way it was, they get upset. So, it's a great point. I don't think we've fully addressed that concern. I think people have found ways to use our tool to get to the result they want, but it might be a little different than the way it works on other apps. So, it's the Card Ladder is a living, breathing piece of software. It changes, it updates. We've got some pretty exciting changes that I can't discuss, but that we're working on, that's coming out later this year. So, that's the best I got for you, John, is that's kind of how
it was a very honest answer. I appreciate that, Chris. And
Yeah.
I expect that from you. And that's why I like you as much as I do. I think, and again, I don't want to speak like I'm the spokesman for all vintage collectors, even though I am one myself. I think I think you agree too. There's a difference sort of between the vintage market and the ultra modern. And I think what vintage collectors are saying, like, it almost should be approached differently. Like, your tool's great, Card Ladder's great, but you really need to do it like this for vintage cards. But like you said, it's sort of hard to do that because it would be almost across the board. And then the other side's going to be like, hey, what the heck's going on here? Why'd you turn this light on? Like,
that's what we'd have to figure out. That's exactly what we'd have to figure out, is how to build in a functionality that these customers want to have, but not take anything away from the user experience that people enjoy right now. And we should be able to figure that out. So tell the vintage guys to go see Josh. I'm telling you, tell them go see Josh at the National. He'll be at our booth. Pass that note to him. He is the guy who will make that happen the fastest. I mean, you can tell me too, and I'll relay it to him, but Josh genuinely gets a thrill. It's one of the things that makes him so great at his job. He genuinely gets a thrill out of responding to what people want to see in the product. Yeah. I mean, we have hundreds of things over the years that he's built because a customer brought it to him. And he said, you would like this? Well, let me think about how I can build this. And then he builds it. And he's done it time and time again, and he loves it. It's just a genuine passion, because there's no immediate reward in that. Like, it might get us new users down the road, but
you obviously know, but it shows he cares, right? If he didn't care, he'd listen, he'd nod, shake his head. Okay, sounds great. All right, see you later.
And John, it will bother him. He'll be thinking about it all night. And then he'll go back, and then first chance he gets in front of his computer, he'll be like, "Let me see what I can do about that." And he just gets a satisfaction out of the intrinsic performance of the job. It's not about, he's not getting a raise because he did that. He just loves to do it. It gives him I've seen it happen hundreds of times working with him. He gets a genuine satisfaction out of being able to build something for somebody, and just to see the little twinkle in their eyes, and they're like, wow, you did that for me, or you built that because of my feedback. And then it's just a magical moment that I've seen it happen hundreds of times. So that's a little secret. If you want to get that thing built, you got to approach Josh.
He's the guy. All right, you heard it from Chris. Like Chris said, I can relay it, but like, cut out the middleman here.
Cut out the middleman. Like, I'm just being completely honest, because like I will present ideas to Josh, but I've got a million ideas, and at the end of the day, he kind of has to be the filter, and he has to say, this is good, but we can put this on the back burner. But if a handful of people come up to him with the same request, he will take it very seriously.
Yeah, no doubt. And listen, better to be like that than the opposite, right? Where you just shake and nod, like, okay, yeah, I'll see about it, and then like let it go by the wayside, or just give it. No,
that's not Josh. Josh can't even. Josh is so funny. He can't even have an unread email. He has to read it. He has to.
That's how I am, though. I can't fix things like he can, but we share the same. Like, I gotta like either read or delete every email.
Yep.
Until it's like zero.
Yep.
Bingo. Yeah, that's probably OCD for me. That's just meticulous attention to detail for Josh. I'm not comparing myself, but at least on the email we're on the
Yeah,
same page. All
exactly.
right, listen, coming down the home stretch here. We got a few minutes left here. We got the Chicago National coming up here in a couple months. As always, I call it the Super Bowl, the hobby. I know you view it very similar. But we got Detroit. We're gonna, I know we've had it in Chicago the last few years, this year as well. But Detroit will be hosting soon here. Kind of your thoughts as someone that goes to every national. Are you looking? And Chicago's great. I know it's your hometown in a sense. But are you looking forward to like seeing a new city? It'll be for I've never, I don't believe Detroit's ever hosted, or if they have, it's been a long time. Your thoughts on the Detroit National? We're going to talk about Chicago plenty, so I thought I'd come at it with a different angle.
Yeah, it's a great angle. Here's what comes to my mind. I'm just shooting from the hip here because I haven't really thought about it or discussed it too much, but it's a good topic. And the few things I think are this. Uh, I like changes of scenery. I like that we had
Yeah,
it in Cleveland, and then I like that it was over in Atlantic City, and I wouldn't hate it if it showed up in some other cities too. But
yeah,
but I also really like it when it's in Chicago. Got all the hotels close by, got that big, beautiful skywalk and all the parking and a giant space that's actually big enough for this hobby. And so, those are important, important things. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like that's kind of the way I look at it too. So that's kind of the other side of
yeah,
the equation. But the thing that matters a lot, and it matters as much now as it ever has. It might even matter more now. Every week there are stories of shops getting broken into,
yeah,
packages getting stolen, cards going missing. Safety and the security of items is so important. And so ultimately, change of scenery, fine. I can complain. It's a longer drive for me, but you know what? It's shorter for somebody else. It all comes out in a wash. But we can't play games or take for granted safety, security, and just protecting people's items, protecting people's personal welfare, creating a safe, trustworthy environment. And so, Atlantic City was a little bit, it was on the edge of how safe it was. I'm just going to call that one straight. And Cleveland was fine. Chicago's fine. So that's what I expect out of Detroit. I just hope that experience is very safe and that people feel safe coming to and from, that people's items are secure, and that everybody can have a safe experience while they're at the show. That's got to be a very high priority. I'm sure it is, but that's something that when I'm evaluating a card show, that is the top priority, no matter whether we're talking about a small show in a mall or we're talking about the Super Bowl of card shows. The safety has got to be number one, safety and security.
yeah. It's got to be paramount. It's got to be paramount. Well said, because it all starts there, right? We have a horror story. And listen, you know how it is. Anything bad happens, right? That's what we're going to talk about, right? What happened in Dallas a few years back with Ash and the $1 million, right? That was a great show with a very bad moment, a very very bad moment, right? And that was overshadowed as it probably should have. That's a big news, but you want to try to avoid that from occurring, whether it be like you said, someone's safety as far as their health or their property as well. So because if it isn't the case, that's what that's what everyone will be talking about, and it'll overshadow a show, no matter how much great stuff happened aside of that. So well said. And I know Chicago's central, and I get it. For me, unfortunately, it cost me a little bit more because I just have to fly in and rent a car. It's not the end of the world. I'm not trying to have a pity party or feel bad for John. But the one thing, and I get the Atlantic City thing. I liked it for the pure selfish fact, Chris. I could drive there in 5 hours and have my own vehicle and that sort of thing. Same thing with Cleveland. But I always like you. I try to think of everybody else, and I think of even like the West Coast people that have to always seek to go east, even towards Chicago, get to, I'd love to see one on the West Coast, even if it costs me a few more bucks to attend. I'm a fairness guy, so I get it. If I lived in California or Washington or Oregon, I'd probably be like, hey, let's have one on this side of the United States. You know what I mean? So I get that, and if that day comes, I would make plans to attend. Although my wallet would probably be mad at me, but it's in the act of fairness, right, to the hobby and the collectors in it. Well, Chris, I think we covered how busy you are with your travel schedule and the shows and what you do, even when you're not at shows. I appreciate you making sometimes, as always, for us here. So, as always, I give kind of the guest the last word. Anything you want to plug, share, put out there, take your time, but the floor is yours, as they say.
I just always love checking in with you, John, and I can't wait to see you at the National if I don't see you sooner. So it's been a great year in the hobby so far here, 2026, and let's hope it keeps going. Cautious optimism is the word of the day. That's my presidential State of the Union. All due respect to Mr. Mangini.
Well said, and I agree. And right, there's two sides to every coin, hobby wise, and any other aspect of life, and we can't forget that. So well put. Again, Chris, thank you. Be well, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good, man.